All right, we are now recording.
Welcome to the March CSBARS meeting. It's so nice to know that you're out there. Can't see you, but in terms of members of the public, and thank you, CSBARS members and staff for attending. Teresa, could you please take roll?
Yes. Bolton,
Yes.
Dolan,
Present.
Hunt,
Present.
Keller,
Present.
Kramer,
Here.
Marshall,
Here.
Yaroshek.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Members of the public can now make written public comments and submit those to CSBARS at calbar.ca.gov email box. Written public comments received by 9 a.m. on Tuesday are distributed to CSBARS prior to the meeting, and comments received after that time are forwarded after the meeting. Verbal public comments up to 2 minutes will be taken now. First, recognizing any individuals who signed up in advance using the link on the agenda, or by raising your hands using the raised hand function on a computer or *9 on a phone. Staff will share a timer on the screen during the comments. Before we begin public comment, I would like to remind everyone that under the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, public comments must pertain to items that are on the agenda or be related to matters that are within the jurisdiction of this agency. There were no individuals who provided written comment, and no individuals provided public comment up to in advance to make a public. Sorry, let's start again. No individuals provided public comment in advance to make a public comment, and all written comments that were sent will be emailed and distributed. Mouthful. Just wanting to go towards now into the chair's report. Really wanted to thank Deans Keller, Nolan, and Hunt, along with me, participated in the roundtable discussion at the January joint Board of Trustees and CBE meeting, discussing the future of the bar exam. I found that trustees and the CBE members were engaged and really interested in hearing from the law school deans. Thought it was a very productive discussion.
And Dean Yaroshek, excuse me, speaking of being heard, might I just touch base for the record? We scanned the room and noticed that no hands were raised for public comment at that time. And then also for the record, member James Bolton is here online. He is appearing camera off due to technical difficulties with his computer.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Karen?
So just really wanting to be mindful of the discussions that are happening about the future. And I thought it was a very productive discussion at the January joint meeting. This coming Friday, the CBE will be meeting as a joint meeting with the Board of Trustees. But what's going to happen first is CBE is scheduled to start at 9 a.m. and do several items of business, and then we'll recess around 11 a.m. to convene the joint meeting of the CBE and Board of Trustees to discuss the future options, and specifically the draft risk benefit analysis of the future bar exam options. If you have not already looked at that agenda, I strongly recommend. There is a lengthy, very informative attachment to that agenda item, and I think helpful to read it before Friday's joint meeting. Then the CBE will reconvene upon termination of the joint Board of Trustees. meeting. So it's sort of a bouncing back and forth. So first CBE meets at 9 a.m., then it will recess at 11 to convene the joint meeting of the board with the Board of Trustees, and then it will reconvene again upon adjournment of the joint Board of Trustees. Also wanted to announce that the following, there are 3 CBE meetings that are going to be taking place in person. The April and the August will be scheduled to be in the San Francisco, and the October in LA. So I'm very excited about the opportunity of those in-person meetings. And that's all I've got for really the chair's report, staff report.
Yes, and then Dean Yurashek, did Dean Keller have any comment about her experience in addressing directly the joint BOT meeting, CBE meeting, as you did? I know you're both doing it together.
Yes, I agree with what Dean Yurashek said, that it seemed like a productive exchange, and that there was genuine interest into what the deans had to offer in terms of the various perspectives and consensus to the extent that it was there. So look forward to seeing how that plays out from here on out.
And I apologize. We also can ask to see about Deans Hunt and Deans Dolan, and how they felt about their part in the roundtable.
Just marvelous.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I'm optimistic that we'll have a resolution on Friday, but I can't speak for the Board of Trustees. We'll just have to see.
I don't think we're calling for any sort of final decision on Friday, Natalie, are we?
I'll defer to Cody.
Yeah, no, the discussion on Friday, there's going to likely be no action taken by the board and the committee of bar examiners. However, I don't think that precludes the members of the committee and the board of beginning to further coalesce around one of the 2 options that's currently being considered. So I think those who observe the meeting, if the conversation begins to coalesce around an option, may leave with an understanding that the committee of bar examiners and the board has a preferred option that it wants to further explore, but no resolution will be passed. That'll be reserved for the April CBE meeting and then the May board meeting.
And I haven't made it all my way through the draft cost benefit study yet, but I think Dean Yurashek was suggesting that there's still some gaps. Is that right?
Correct. There are, and it specifically says draft and pending. So it's there's a lot of information, I think very informative, but I also think that it's as part of the draft also wanting to hear more from both the CBE and the trustees is my impression, but that's how I took it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to frame it. The even more preliminary version of that draft was presented to the Committee of Bar Examiners Subcommittee on Examination Development. At that point, there were several placeholders for certain sections where additional information is expected. Their feedback helped fill in some of those gaps. There will be some areas where I think the discussion on Friday will give staff some more insights into what information the Committee of Bar Examiners and the board thinks should be included in this report. So it's by no means a final version. It still is a very early draft.
But it seems like it's working out to be basically the vehicle for making the decision rather than because it has quite a good deal about background, and so effectively it is the foundational document for the decision. At least that's the way I'm viewing it.
I think of it as operating on somewhat of a parallel track. When the board submits a recommendation to the Supreme Court under the new rules of court, there will be required, and the Committee of Bar Examiners will be required to submit a risk-benefit analysis. So this exercise needs to be completed, and the analysis needs to be submitted with the recommendation. Is the analysis itself the tool that will lead to members making a decision? I think that really is just kind of up to the members and how the discussion shakes out. Whatever recommendation is made by the members, though, the draft risk-benefit analysis will need to reflect some of the considerations and I think some of the priorities that were considered, risks that were considered in a number of these discussions along the way. But I guess I'm trying to make just a clear distinction that the members should have a discussion and make their decisions based on all of the information that's been presented to them, not just this draft report. This draft report will just serve as part of the analysis that's required to be submitted to the court when that recommendation is submitted.
So Cody, I didn't want to interrupt you. I know that was part. I don't know if that was all of the update. We sort of jumped right in.
Yeah, well, let's go to that, and I'll just have maybe a few additional pieces. So this is moving on to the report on the status of the future bar exam options. We've already touched on it. I just wanted to give really a high-level highlight of what to anticipate on Friday. Let me take a step back now that we've discussed out of order some of the details, but I just wanted to remind members here kind of where we are currently at in the discussion. After the January joint meeting of the committee and the board directed staff to research two possible paths forward. Option one would be to use the questions that are developed by Kaplan Exam Services under its agreement with the State Bar to administer an exam that looks like the exam today. That's essays, performance test questions, and multiple choice questions. But this approach would really be to allow for more time for the Committee of Bar Examiners and the Board of Trustees to assess some of the performance data and other information about the next gen bar exam, the next gen UBE, after some initial administrations of that exam. And under this first option, the committee and the board would then revisit at a later date whether or not to adopt the next gen UBE. The second option under consideration would be to just adopt the next gen UBE beginning with the July 2028 exam. And neither of these options would prevent the State Bar from exploring a California specific exam in the long-term future over maybe a 5 or 10 year development window if that's determined at a later date. At this meeting, we just started to talk about it, but there's going to be a couple of elements that I think will shape the discussion. There will be this risk-benefit analysis, and I'm glad we pointed out it's a preliminary draft. It's still a work in progress, and this discussion is going to help shape the final version of that. There will also be a discussion about kind of some of the decision-making framework. At a prior meeting, we began to discuss kind of the spectrum of impacts that this decision can be laid out over. On one hand, it's additional control, but increased risk. On the other hand, there's less State Bar control over certain matters, but perhaps less risk, operational risk. And so we'll explore that framework again in more detail. And then there's an revision, or not a revision, an update of the kind of cost and expense analysis. At a prior meeting, the State Bar or staff provided a very high level assessment of what we believe to be current bar exam expenses that would either increase or decrease pending or under either of these options. There will be an updated version of that will provide, I think, more specifics than we've been able to present in the past. So that's what to expect at the Friday meeting. That's my update for that. I think we, yeah, go ahead now. I was going to hand that off to you.
So the next item on the staff report relates to the work plan. So we piloted this last year, but then we pivoted away from it. So this year, we are implementing the work plan structure. I wanted to confirm that the Board of Trustees adopted the work plan that was recommended by the CSBARS to the CBE, and therefore recommended up to the Board of Trustees. We are already proceeding in accord with that. The work plan is stored on the January agenda. People can take a look at that agenda anytime. The work plan will remain posted there. And on this agenda, we're doing a couple of items in accord with that work plan. Just recapping the CSBARS term recommendation from the Board of Trustees sunset review in preparation for CBE action, and then also finalizing a look at the AI recommendations from the CSBARS to the committee so that they can consider it at their March and April meetings. We hope that the work plan will not only allow the members here to structure their time, but also to inform the public about the topics that are expected for discussion so that they can prepare their questions and public comment as well. So thank you to everyone for putting that together, and we will continue to proceed in that manner. And are there any questions related to the work plan?
I love it. It's not a question, it's a comment. I just think it's great, and I'm excited to see it implemented and working.
Well, and I appreciate everyone's active participation in putting it together. I think that it really does benefit to have an enriched agenda regarding all of your feedback. So thank you, everyone. And at this point, I'll turn it back to Cody to talk a little bit more about the content validation panels.
Yeah, I'll just provide a brief update. Following the February 2025 exam, we implemented several enhancements of our bar exam question review process for the future in anticipation that we would continue to explore options that would utilize our questions developed by Kaplan Exam Services. I think at our last meeting, we indicated that the policy for recruiting and selecting content validation panelists and subject matter experts to review future bar exam questions have been approved by the Supreme Court. And following that approval, we had opened up the application again to solicit applications from licensed attorneys, law school faculty members, and California judges and justices to serve as panelists or subject matter experts. The update I want to share today is that application process has closed again. We received more than 500 new applications. That's on top of many hundreds of applications from our first solicitation. So we're in a really strong position to begin convening content validation panels and subject matter experts, some of which will likely include faculty from perhaps law schools on this call or those that are in attendance. So this update's, I think, relevant. We have an initial set of selected individuals to serve as panelists and subject matter experts who have already been reviewed and approved by the chair and vice chair of the Committee of Bar Examiners. For that group, we've notified them this week that they've been selected and will begin to work to finalize agreements with them. There's another set of candidates that we identified in this most recent solicitation effort. Those candidates are still undergoing review by the chair and vice chair of the committee. And once that process is done, we'll be notifying them as well. So we had indicated to the public, and again, this includes law school faculty, that we would be making selections and notifying them in March. And we're on track to get all of those notifications out by the end of this month.
Thanks, Cody. So now I'll turn it over to Teresa, if that's okay with Dean Yaroshek.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I really just have a quick reminder to please let us know, let the State Bar know when there are changes in your law school administration contact, such as your registrar or your dean. If you have a separate contact for dealing with moral character, it's also helpful to send us that information as well. So you can email the updated name, phone number, and email to lawschoolregulation@calbar.ca.gov. And also just a reminder, I do know that some schools have transitioned in the past few years to the Evergreen email. So I recognize that the email is not changing when you're having new staff in that position, but please do still update us with the new name and phone number so we can be staying in the loop with who is the correct contact. And just a reminder, there is a duty for the accredited and unaccredited law schools to update the CBE of these changes. So please make sure to send those into, again, lawschoolregulation@calbar.ca.gov. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to clarify, to emphasize, if you choose to use an evergreen email, we would still ask for the direct email of the registrar for those moments that we may need them, but we will generally use the evergreen email. So we definitely do want both. And if you choose the evergreen email, from time to time, we see during transitions, the new individual may not be provided with that email. So ensure continuity in your administration if you choose that item.
Thank you both. Very important information. Disseminating information both ways is critical. Thank you. And speaking of information, Natalie, on the planning for the registrars meeting?
Yes, so it is a while away, but the annual registrars meeting will take place on September 22nd, 2026. It will be an online meeting, very much like this one, but we wanted to get the word out there so that people could save the date. And so we could think about topics that registrars may want to discuss. Generally, these topics will be those that are specifically related to the registrar's duties. So often pre-legal evaluation related, records related, registration related, application details for the bar exam, things like that. And we often will include a demonstration of the applicant portal if there are new features as to that. This year, we have more new deans and more registrars than I can remember in quite a while. So we're also thinking about incorporating something for new individuals. I just wanted to put the idea out there so that you can start to think about and the public can start to think about the topics that are of interest and can begin sending those in. We include what we think we want to share out, but this is a meeting that really benefits from specific questions that registrars have, or telling us the top questions that they receive from their students, whether they know the answer or not. And you might say, why do we want to know the questions that they can already answer? And the reason for that is we're always looking to hone our communication, make it better and better. And so if the answer is available, but the applicants are not easily finding it, we want to think about why that is and if we should enhance or adjust our communications as well. So encourage you to have all of your registrars plan to attend that meeting. Any questions about that? All right, that's all.
Oh, Natalie, you muted yourself.
Oh, okay. So that's everything I have regarding the registrars meeting. Look forward to seeing all of your registrars there. This is also open to ABA registrars, and we'll be inviting them as well, all California Law School registrars.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cody, I believe you are next.
Yeah, I think this is the last update. This is a follow-up to a discussion we had at our last meeting. At our last meeting, we discussed the Board of Trustees directions to implement operational improvements for CSBARS. This was following our 5-year sub-entity review. I want to thank the members. I think we had a very thorough discussion. The feedback that we received from you all was very clear and concise. And so that allowed us to bring forward or to summarize that feedback into a set of recommendations that we'll be bringing forward to the Committee of Bar Examiners at the Friday meeting. So at this Friday meeting, the committee is going to consider a report that largely reflects this feedback. It addresses the member term lengths, the process for establishing CSBAR's annual calendar, steps that have already been taken to improve the feedback loop between CSBARS and the Committee of Bar Examiners, including the aligned work plan that we discussed just moments ago. So the crux of what the committee will be asked to consider at the Friday meeting is, one, to approve several staff practices that are either already implemented or will be implemented to address the board's directive. Again, that includes the continuing with this aligned work plan process that's worked very well, continuing the practice of having the CSBARS chair establish the annual calendar in coordination with staff, and also codifying what has been kind of more recent practice, which is inviting the CSBARS chair to certain committee meetings to provide direct oral reports. So there's one bucket of these practices. And then there's a second set of changes that we believe need to be made formal by updating the Board of Trustees board policy manual as it relates to sub-entity charters and rules. And so we will be also asking the Committee of Bar Examiners to recommend that the Board of Trustees update its policy to reflect the new term length for CSBARS. The board, as we discussed at the last meeting, recommended 2 or 3 years for term lengths. This staff report, at least as it's initially written, recommends 3 years, which I think the feedback that we received is that members here prefer longer terms, and I think our CB members maybe also have some alternative ideas. But whatever the final term length is, it needs to be reflected in the Board of Trustees board policy manual. The other changes also include expanding the definition of an accreditation expert to include the positions that we discussed in January. What we have done so as to not unnecessarily prohibit the recruitment of experts, instead of having to define every possible relevant job position or title, we've provided some of the examples that we discussed at the January meeting, and we've in this written policy for the board policy manual given the CB chair and vice chair the responsibility of determining whether an individual meets the qualifications of an accreditation expert when the CB chair and vice chair make their appointments to CSBARS. So again, the committee is going to consider these 2 buckets, approving our staff practices and then recommending that the board formally update its board policy manual to reflect some of the other changes. And again, I want to thank the members. Our staff report, I think, really tried to reflect your feedback and the discussion that we had at the last meeting, and I think that really helped shape how to move forward.
Any questions?
I'll just say that the staff report to the CBE mentions your preference, just keep it at 4 years, the terms for members on this body. And I am intending to propose a motion that recommends to the board, recognizing their request to the CBE was to pick between 2 or 3 years, but saying that we believe the reasons that are attributed to you in the staff report suggest that we should leave it at 4 years. If they're unwilling to do that, 3 years would be our next choice. So that's just giving you a heads up. That's what I'm planning to do on Friday.
Thank you for that heads up. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Anyone else? I don't see any. Okay. So the next item is the approval of the January 21st CSBARS open session minutes. Are there any corrections or questions that we need to review at this time? Yes, Dean Keller.
I just had a minor suggested edit on page 3 under item 7 business. We have a list of 1, 2, 3, and then it says 1, 2, 3, also 4. So I think that 4 is supposed to be down below 3A.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other corrections? All right. Is there a motion to move the minutes for a vote as corrected?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. I heard correctly, Dean Keller moved and Dean Hunt second. All right. Teresa, could you please take a vote?
Yes. Bolton,
Yes.
Dolan,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Keller,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Yuroshek.
Yes.
Okay, with 7 yeses and 0 nos, the motion carries.
Great. Thank you. Now to business items. And I really want to first before we go, to thank Dean Hunt and Dean Marshall and Natalie for working on this first item, which is discussion regarding exploration of the requirement for California accredited law schools and unaccredited law schools to offer a course regarding the competent use of generative artificial intelligence. And it just go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. So Dean Yuroshek, I'll start, and then Deans Hunt and Marshall will be joining in. In a moment, we'll bring up a presentation, and we'll be talking about a couple of things. One, we'll just briefly go through the history so that everyone is on the same page, including members of the public. Two, CSBARS asked staff to do a survey to see if schools at large were of the same opinion as the members here, not only to record that feedback, but to have some specific data to bring to the CBE. I'll be talking about that. There's very good response rate as to that. And then Dean Hunt and Dean Marshall will be engaging you in a couple of recommendations. So let's go ahead and get started with the presentation. And this presentation is also posted up on the CSBARS agenda, so a copy is available, and you can also follow along if you're watching from the public.
Yeah, just give me 1 moment to get that up.
Terrific. Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you. So this just ties it to the place on the agenda, item 4.1, and the very long yet informative title. Next slide.
Sorry, we have this as a PDF this time.
Okay. All right, so here just a quick reminder of how we got here. So back in November 2023, the COPRAC and our ethics group here at the State Bar began to look at artificial intelligence, started with generative artificial intelligence, and then more generally. They created some practical guidance that was brought to the Board of Trustees back in November 2023. The board adopted that guidance for practicing attorneys and also asked the CBE to consider how generative AI might impact internal admissions workings, as well as law school operations, including whether or not there should be a course involving generative AI. So the bar exam related items were dealt with separately. AI is not being used in admissions or related to the bar exam at this time, but we do have some recommendations that we'll be talking about here regarding law schools. Initially, when CSBARS discussed this, the area of knowledge had existed for a while, but was exploding very rapidly. Technology was changing, new individuals were coming into the market, and as a result, the initial recommendation from CSBARS was practical guidance. But very quickly, the schools began to react and incorporate this information. Legal practitioners and legal scholars also began to think about create use cases, use policies, ethical guidelines, etc. And so around the time that you might have sent forth that original recommendation, you decided to think further and make a more specific recommendation, more closely tailored to the Board of Trustees recommendation. And so over the past couple of meetings, that's what the CSBARS has been talking about. And in the background, we've also been monitoring not only how AI is being used at unaccredited and accredited law schools, but also ABA approved law schools. So now here in this new year, the work plan includes exploring course requirements for law schools. And here's what schools said when we surveyed them. So we surveyed schools from February 20th to March 8th. We surveyed all of the deans from CALS as well as registered law schools. The response rate was very good, 72% in total, 76% of CALS, and 63% of unaccredited law schools. Going into the survey, CSBARS had discussed an interest in having a requirement, certainly in the area of practical skills training, potentially in the area of professional responsibility, but being allowed to integrate that as each school saw fit rather than a specific course. So that's where we were in the CSBARS discussion. And let's see what the wider deans community had said, which is relatively aligned. Next slide. So here, 89% of the law schools agreed that law students should be trained on the competent use of technology and artificial intelligence. And this expanded definition of technology and artificial intelligence really is twofold. First of all, there is now a duty for practicing licensed attorneys to keep abreast of technology in the legal arena, and there also is an MCLE requirement. So making students and applicants aware of this before they license in California is certainly prudent. It also allows an elastic definition. Artificial intelligence may be the beginning. It may morph into additional relevant technology features, and so this potential rule change will be responsive to technology as it continues to change. And it will signal that keeping up with technology has become more important than ever for today's practitioners. And 45% of law schools agree that the state bar should require courses regarding the competent use of technology and artificial intelligence. So this is the gradient color that we're going to be using on all of these slides. Strongly agree is going to be the state bar blue. Strongly disagree is going to go to this maroon color. So overall, you can see here 67% agree that law students should be trained to prepare themselves for how technology will impact their practice. So this is the aspirational item. Thinking about currently, is the law school doing that today? We actually see relatively quick response here. If we look at both agree and strongly agree, over 50% do feel that they are already taking action in this area. And most of those also are very comfortable with the state bar asking about some level of requirement, but some of the next slides refine exactly the type of requirement that they recommend. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so very similar to your discussion, we asked the schools to rank several different possibilities about how this task could be effectuated, and the highest ranked option was to place a requirement in the practice-based skills and competency training currently required under the existing rules. So for unaccredited law schools, they're required to offer a total of 6 credit hours of practical skills training. And under this, some portion of that would be in the area of technology and artificial intelligence. The standard is a bit more broad for accredited schools, 6 hours required and 15 hours available. So that's what is existing today. Several examples are described in those rules, and added to those examples would be technology and artificial intelligence. Second most popular choice was to have an elective of sorts, and some schools already do have such an elective. Purdue Global is an example. We received a public comment regarding that school's elective, and also Dean Marshall, I understand your school has, Laverne also has an elective course like that.
That's correct.
Yeah. And then third possibility is adding this either in addition or instead to the professional responsibility course. Generally, the schools were not in favor of requiring a specific standalone course, in part due to anticipatory action regarding how the bar exam will look in the future, what will be required, and also wanting flexibility to integrate into the curriculum. And you saw last time that California School of Law was compared as an example versus University of Laverne. One did a standalone choice, one did an embedded choice, and both schools and students were happy with those choices. Next slide. So here we found that 61% of law schools report that an additional course might be of significant concern right now based on various things that are going on at this time. And they're also aware that rapidly changing technology is a significant concern. So one of the nuances that we're interested in hearing from you about is this second point. There are 2 ways that you could incorporate these concepts into your curriculum. One is teaching a framework to make students aware of what will be expected of them, and potentially in a narrative form, how artificial intelligence is being used at this time. A second possibility is actually garnering that technical expertise and offering that technical expertise through your faculty at the law school. So you can see that people do have a concern about rapidly changing technology and the overcrowding in curriculum right now. And what is your current faculty's level of experience with technology? We are actually seeing higher numbers of technical competency than we received in the past, and we're seeing more training with faculty than we've seen in the past, but there definitely still is a gap in this area. Next slide. Here's just some additional data, cutting the data from a different angle, looking at CALS versus unaccredited to see if those different school types felt differently. But generally, their points of view were relatively aligned. We see pretty clearly that schools are not hoping to offer a non-credit course in the area of artificial intelligence. Absolutely 0 on that. And we see that CALs are more likely to want to offer a specific course, but both are happy with the embedded option as well. And you can see that many schools are taking action in the absence of regulation. Only a small percent are not really engaged in any AI activities right now. Okay, next slide. Some additional findings. We asked about how long it might take for schools to adopt these requirements or how much time they would like in terms of phasing in a requirement. Many schools said approximately 2 years, and that sounds very long. But I think that part of that had to do with schools just thinking ahead, depending on where this requirement comes out in the school year. They would want to prepare materials for the next school year. And so this number really reflects that. And we don't see schools waiting to take action, waiting for regulation in this area. Most are acting right now. And we see that they are not only making policies for both their students and their staff, they are also providing faculty with affirmative training in the area of AI. Next slide. I'll leave these up here for a moment. There was a narrative comment box where people could give some free-form examples in this area. And I wonder for Dean Marshall and Dean Hunt, when you looked at some of the free-form content, if there was any particular comment or any particular trend that stood out for you when you're thinking about what you did to put together this presentation, but also getting ready for today.
I guess we, of course, have gone down the avenue of embedding the training into a variety of courses. So it's part of our practical skills training. I think it's real important for everyone to keep in mind it's really twofold. It's teaching students how to use it as well as covering the legal ramifications of using it. And we address that in the professional responsibility course. But it also gets addressed in the other classes as well. In our student handbook, and it gets discussed by the professor. You've just got to be so careful with it because everybody's doing it. I know that a case came down today where they've been brought up before the state bar for malpractice and having their bar a license being reviewed. If you just throw it to AI and it has a hallucination and makes up stuff and you submit it to the court, it's dangerous, and we don't want any of our students getting caught up in that, of course.
I agree. You're talking about coming up with a fake case as hallucination. I've seen that happen several times.
And if you're thinking about how schools are using this right now, I think part of what those freeform comments illustrate is that schools are trying a lot of different things, and we'll learn more in the future about how they're working. So to step outside of our arena, University of Michigan now has an optional essay that allows, and in fact requires, applicants to use AI to share their prompt and to show what changes they made and why. So to show a before and after in that essay. So there it's beginning for those that choose that essay even before they start. We saw a couple of examples in those free-form comments that schools are doing something pretty similar with their homework that they're using in class. Another school talked about teaching the conceptual ethical responsibility, but not the technology, leaving the students to do that. And then still another school deciding that they would like the students to learn without the use of AI until their final year, so that they build a strong foundation and then fold it in once that competency is there. So we will all begin to learn how that works. We do have one local example through the University of San Francisco that you might hear from in the future. They've partnered with a particular AI company to embed AI technology in all of their coursework starting this past fall. So we'll hear a little bit more about how that works, and we'll want to hear more about what you are doing as well. So at this point, we'll go back to the presentation. There are 2 rule suggestions based on what you talked about in the prior, and all of the survey results are in support of these. And let's go ahead from the freeform content. So the first option puts all of the changes in the practice-based skills requirement. So this is a different rule reference in accredited versus unaccredited, but the concept is the same. For accredited schools, 4.160D and the professionalism and civility category is the area that talks about practice-based skills and competency. The black text is the rule as it exists today. The proposed red text is the addition. So just adding as an option the competent use capabilities and limitations of technology and artificial intelligence. And then the companion for unaccredited schools, next slide. Similar, there is a reference in both the rule and also the guideline, looking at the practical skills training and adding that same wording. A second option is whether to choose competency or professional responsibility as the placement, either one, the other, or both. So in the professional responsibility area, both accredited and unaccredited schools are required to have a course in professional responsibility. And a positive, a pro to adding it in this area would be that this is a framework. It would be discussed in the concept of ethics and it would be prioritized. Also, this is a course that most schools use to prepare their students for the MPRE. So we would need to understand how to balance both the priority of teaching this technology and preparing the students for the MPRE at the same time. And much the same way, the professional responsibility is lodged in that same 4.160D, professionalism and preparation for practice with accredited schools. Next slide will show us unaccredited. So here it's guideline 5.10, professional responsibility course. And this would make clear that one of the topics in professional responsibility should be technology and competent use of AI. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Dean Hunt and Dean Marshall to talk about these two options and what the CSBARS would like to refer to the CBE in the upcoming meetings over the next 2 months.
I think as you see the rules that were just presented, you really see, as I view it, it really is a twofold issue. The first set of rules dealing with competent use and how to use it competently and teaching students how to use AI, which it's out there. There's no stopping it. And the second fold being that within the professional responsibility courses, we're discussing the ethical ramifications of not using it properly and not monitoring AI. You can't just trust it to be an attorney for you. And so I really do see it as a twofold, and I think we should advocate, modifying the rules in both parts so that we're one saying, hey, in practical skills, let's teach students how to competently use it. And over here under professional responsibility, we'll be discussing the ramifications of its use. You're of course
Not
going
using
to
it.
get addressed throughout, but the ethical part will get addressed throughout, but with a focused look at it as well.
Yeah, I would second what William just said. It should be both in terms of competency uses and then the ethical ramifications. I almost feel like, although I do favor the language in the professional responsibility proposed rule or proposed standard, I do favor it being inclusive and in specifically articulated. But I don't know how you teach professional responsibility and not address artificial intelligence. So I think it's important that we highlight it in specific articulated language. I'm not sure it's necessary if you're really preparing somebody, excuse me, for the ethical ramifications of practicing law. I also think it's impressive that the general survey data seems to suggest that everybody's in the majority on the same page in terms of an approach and in terms of a recommendation to the CBE.
I think that's very true. And the only difference you really saw had to do very much with the size of the school. Many of the CALs are larger, so they have more of an option to not only embed the technology, but offer a separate elective course. Most CALs have a wider menu of electives, and otherwise they really moved in lockstep. Dean Yurashek.
Sort of a question and a comment. In option 1, the language specifically states that it is to include, quote, the competent use. So to me, I see that specific part of the practice-based skills includes what would be in the PR class course. So I'm not sure that both is required to cover that competent use. To me, I think the practice based skilled covers everything that would be included if we sent both options. My preference would be to send option 1 and not both options because I think it's duplicative of the content.
I think you're right about that, but I also think it's really important that it's emphasized. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having it in 2 places to emphasize it. But you're right. You want to narrowly define it, it's very clear. On the other hand, I think we need to emphasize the fact that, especially in professional responsibility, after you learn how to use it, you can't use it all the ways that it could be used.
I think it's why I felt like I was talking in circles because when we are dealing with it in the practical skills class, we're talking about, hey, here's what you can't do, here's what it doesn't do, and it may hallucinate on you, and you've got to pull it out, and da 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 da. But over in the professional responsibility section of it, that's where we're going to say, and oh, by the way, you can get in really big trouble if you don't do it. You're not just going to fail your civil procedure exam, you're going to get disbarred or something along those lines. But I understand what you're saying from a drafting standpoint, that's for sure.
Yes.
I guess having taught PR for almost 30 years, I guess that's where I'm coming from. So little time. Different schools have, we have 2 classes on PR, so we could very well add this part, and we do already. But I'm thinking, not, and like Natalie mentioned, some schools really focus PR on preparing students to take the MPRE and taking time away. I don't know. I mean, I think it's wonderful in both. I'm just thinking of the broader universe of our schools, both the CALs and the unaccredited.
So if we were to discuss this, do you feel that the members could reach a consensus on option 1 versus option 2, or might there just be a difference of opinion? And one option would also be to do a straw poll about how people are feeling versus option 1 versus option 2.
I think a straw poll may be a good idea, but I see it being is it one or both is what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah.
And if should that be the straw poll? Is
I
it?
think that's what I'm hearing. I think I'm hearing consensus that everyone agrees on 1, and that there is some discussion as to whether to add 2, the professional responsibility adjustment.
Yes, I think you should recommend that they look at both recommendations, and that we've had some controversy about both or just one, and let the committee decide. So I think they'd have the same controversy.
Okay.
If it's a controversy, I don't know if it's a controversy, but I have the same difference of opinion, maybe.
Do others feel that this is something that can be worked into the course, or do others maintain a concern about this?
I know that we're addressing it in the professional responsibility course as it's currently structured. Um, Unlike Professor Yurchek, I do not teach the professional responsibility course. So I don't know to what extent it's taking up valuable time that could be spent on something else. But we do see it as something that we of value that needs to be addressed specifically, added to our PR course. It was sort of the big update that was done last time the course came around. So y- y-
Dean Hunt, just
I'm
curious, might it be fair to say that when you made the changes to your PR course, they were more of a high level change, just saying, hey, here are some key points to be aware of in this area, rather than the more detailed type of change someone might make in order to meet the competency training. So this might be more of a theory. We're not going to teach you how to do it, but we're going to talk to you about what's important. So more compact.
in the professional responsibility course, absolutely. It was further back. It was not a how to use it. It was a what happens if you do and don't use it properly, for sure. Um, so that's the focus in the PR course, definitely.
Mhm. Then Dean Keller.
Yes, I was just going to add, I mean, I would support including it in both places. I don't see the language, at least as I read it, in with regard to option 2, uh, related to PR as requiring a particular extensive dive into AI, Gen AI tools, but rather focused, as the language says, on the duty of competence when it relates to technology and AI. So I don't think that students should be able to come out of a PR course and not have a high level understanding that if they use ChatGPT and just act as though that's solid research, that's going to be a major, ethical lapse. So at least the way I interpret the language, I don't think that that's going to push out a whole lot of other equally important information.
Thank you. Dean Yaroshek, does this help address your concern, or do you think there's still an additional element to bring to the discussion?
No, I mean, I am fine with both. I just think I don't want to be fine with both because of my school, right? And I agree with and all the comments. It absolutely is discussed and needs to be discussed in PR when talking about competence, right? It's in the comments, etc. It's just my thinking of do we need two changes, two rules amended when one will do? But I am fine if the consensus is to do both. I'm okay. I'll go along with it. It's an important topic. I'm just concerned about regulations.
A question for you. As the PR instructor, have the textbooks been updated to now include AI in professional responsibility textbooks?
Yes and no. I mean, my textbook are the rules themselves.
Yeah.
So I really focus on the rules and not cases. I'll bring in an opinions, right, from and certain cases, but really focusing in on the rules and on the comments and the discussions in the comments and a competence and being up to date in technology is in there. So I'm envisioning it's happening. If you're, so it's not a big deal for generally, I think. It's just, adding one more recommend or one more requirement. That's really it. It's an important it's an important topic. I'm all for it. I will eliminate my concern of duplicate regulations.
Appreciate being able to talk it through, though. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, it looks like the group has achieved a consensus to recommend options 1 and 2 together to the CBE for further discussion on Friday and again, potentially in April. Thank you, everyone. And in particular, thank you to Deans Hunt and Marshall. And thank you also for the suggestion to poll the deans. I think that added a richness to the discussion.
Totally agree. Thank you for your hard work up front. I really appreciate the inclusion. It's been a pattern recently of those surveys. I think it's great, a great way to include more voices. And so thank you for recommending those items. All
And
right.
thank you for the sensitivity to having more rules.
All right. Great discussion. Thank you so much. And we have one more item, and that's discussion, and I love the wording, of opportunities to collect enrolled student demographic data that comports with state bar-wide demographic identifiers. And that word opportunity is my favorite word. So I will hand it over to you, Cody.
Yeah, thank you, Dean Yurshek. And we do choose our words very carefully. Opportunities was intentional. This is very much an early discussion about really trying to understand whether a future change to our demographic collection would have any unintended consequences or would create unexpected cost or level of effort burdens for law schools. And so this discussion really is at the ground floor. So yeah, we're exploring it. So let me actually get my slide presented and I'll start actually talking about the topic here. Okay. Okay, just 1 second. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just having trouble with my screen here. 1 second. Okay, there we go. So just some quick background. You all know more than anyone, but the State Bar collects demographic data on California law students through its annual compliance and periodic compliance reports that are filled out by you all, our law schools across the state. This is really important to a number of our initiatives. For one, we do use the data that we collect through our annual compliance reports for our law school oversight and assessing compliance with the rules and guidelines. But also, it's become more and more important to the state bar's public reporting of data. In the realm of law schools, that includes our annual law school performance report and our law school profile report, which analyze all 3 categories of law schools in California, and a variety of other areas of the state bar that report on demographics, whether it's the demographics of the current attorney population or our legal specialist program. We are using data to tell more of the story more than ever. And for our law school work, being able to disaggregate our data has really given these reports, particularly law school performance report, a lot of really valuable nuance. Currently, the questions, the demographic questions, and the response options that are available were designed largely to align with several other similar data collection efforts. And that includes the American Bar Association's standard 509 forms. This is part of ABA-approved law schools' data reporting requirements. And then maybe most importantly, our current questions and response options were designed to align with the U.S. Department of Education's integrated post-secondary education data system, the IPED system. And the purpose of both of these alignments, one, being able to align with the ABA data collection efforts, allowed for some of our reporting efforts like the law school profile report, the ability to do comparative analysis. And then for our schools that participate in Title IV federal student aid programs, they are required to report the IPEDS data. And so at the time that our current regime was created, I think the belief was that the alignment of our data reporting would kind of reduce the administrative burden and prevent any kind of duplicative efforts required of our law schools. So the current data questions, the demographic data questions and responses were implemented over 2020 and 2022. And again, they've supported some of our more recent reporting efforts. So today, just as a comparison, and this is a very high level comparison, but the state bar, the ABA, and IPEDS requirements all include race and ethnicity demographic questions and gender demographic questions. The state bar has its own sexual orientation, disability status, and veteran status questions that are included in the annual and periodic compliance reports. And these additional questions are really standard across a number of other state bar data collection efforts, including like our attorney census, which is a voluntary census of the current attorney population. In 2025, beginning in 2025, there was an expansion of, or an addition to IPEDS requirements that impact some institutions, but is notable for today's discussion. And that was the inclusion of questions related to family income level and students' first generation status. And we're going to talk in just a moment about why these additional socioeconomic indicators are interesting. But I think just to start to see that part of the discussion, those elements are of interest because of the unique population of our California law schools. And Dean Keller, I see your hands raised.
Thanks. Just point of clarification, I've been spending an inordinate amount of time working on this ACTS survey, and there's no questions at the graduate level related to first generation status. So that's not something that at least those of us required to do the ACTS survey are collecting or filling out in terms of already having that data for ACTS. And for the family income level, it's looking at it simply at a point in time in terms of looking at the admissions profile. So I just wanted to kind of be clear that, you know, even if some or most of our schools are filling out the ACTS, that doesn't mean we actually have this data already, let alone in a usable way for the student body as a whole.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. This data might not be available, and you're right. The new ACTS requirements, not every school that submits IPEDS data has to meet these new ACTS requirements, and then there's even differences between undergraduate and graduate student reporting as well. This is intended to serve as a teeing up for a later part of the discussion, but thank you for pointing that out because you're right. This is not to imply that this is required of all of our schools on today's call or all of our California law schools.
This might not be the right place to bring this up, but we have a lot of students who are very resistant to providing this information, some of the information.
That is great feedback that I hope we can dive into that actually later in the discussion. But one of the things that I think I want our law schools to discuss here is whether or not there's other challenges or obstacles we haven't considered. This presentation doesn't call out resistance from students, but I think that's actually something I'd like to dig into a little bit further. That's something we certainly should consider.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. So the purpose of today's discussion is really to visit this opportunity to discuss and explore whether two things. One, whether to better align the demographic data that we collect, that our law schools collect, with our data collection efforts elsewhere in the state bar. And that would help align our law school data with data that we collect from our registered applicants, as well as our attorney population, which really supports the ability to do comparative analysis across these populations. Why now? Well, this exploring opportunities is part of the Committee of Bar Examiners work plan. And so again, we're really at the ground floor of this discussion. And then also, and this again, to Dean Keller's point, not that it's required, but there seems to be in other relevant areas, more discussion about socioeconomic identifiers over traditional race and gender identifiers that I think is reflected in these X requirements, but also here in CSBARS, we've had a number of discussions that have led to, I think, similar feedback. Recently, we discussed our post-bar exam surveys, and a lot of the feedback that we received was whether or not we could better understand our test taker populations based on the unique experiences of students at CALs and unaccredited law schools. And so in response to that discussion, we added what we call our situational questions to our post-exam survey. So we now ask about caregiver status or employment status, and also some other questions about first-generation status. So we've here in this room have discussed some of these socioeconomic questions, and we've taken some initial steps elsewhere in the State Bar's work to try to add that additional nuance. And so I think the question is whether or not that could also be reflected in the data that we collect from our law schools. So there's really two buckets of considerations that I'd love for us to explore. Consideration one is comporting the demographic data to other State Bar data. What this would really require as far as an effort is concerned is to expand the race, ethnicity, gender, and sexual identity response options. Currently, our data requires that a student identify as one of a small number of, for example, race and ethnicity identifiers. Elsewhere in the State Bar, there's been a more nuanced set of question and response options. So an individual may select Asian as a race and ethnicity identifier, but then also be given the opportunity to articulate that with some more additional detail by indicating whether they're Chinese, Filipino, or some other subgroup. So that is an option, is to employ here some of these expansions that have allowed for additional nuance and detail with, this is just one example, but in this case, for race and ethnicity. To comport with other State Bar data that's currently being collected, it could also require adding additional questions regarding veteran status, gender, and sexual identity. So for example, what is currently a question that is as simple as, are you a veteran? In some more recent reporting efforts, we at the State Bar have expanded that into two questions. Are you currently serving? And have you previously served? And so there's similar expansion of the questions related to gender, maybe perhaps please select your gender identity, and then we may ask, do you identify as perhaps cisgender, transgender, and maybe another selection. So to comport our student data to other regimes of questions and response options we use at the State Bar, it could also include adding more questions. So really, to understand kind of the level of effort, we're talking about modifying existing questions so that the response options that someone has available to them are different, or also adding more questions. And I think to Dean Dolan's point, that may be received positively or perhaps negatively, and maybe it's adding an extra burden for students who have to respond to these types of questions. We do think there's some pros and cons to following these steps. As I mentioned, the pros that we see is that adding that extra level of nuance provides better insights. And with those insights, you can better support targeted access and inclusion efforts at the State Bar and our law schools. And so, for example, one can imagine that understanding, just to use the previous example, understanding that student population has a large Asian population may tell you one thing, but understanding that that large Asian population is primarily of perhaps Chinese descent may tell you something else about how to reach and communicate and engage students. Another benefit, the response options may be more relevant and better aligned with actual personal identities of students. Perhaps, I think to Dean Dolan's point, some might find it, perhaps more, they may have the opposite response, but for some people, they have a more specific personal race and gender identity, and expanding these questions really helps them respond more truthfully to these questions based on their personal identity. And then I think, as I mentioned before, to the extent that other State Bar data collection and reporting is using these expanded response options and questions and reporting on it, doing so here with our student population would allow for that comparative analysis. It would allow for more interesting reporting that draws a through line between our student populations, our test taker populations, and our attorney population. The negatives, of course, this would shift the data collection away from the alignment that we had secured between our questions, the ABA and the IPEDS reporting requirements. What I hope we'll get into once we start the discussion, there's certainly a cost and probably a level of effort related to updating the forms and tools that are used to collect student data. And we don't know what that is. You all do, and we want to get a better sense of that. And of course, there's just a level of effort necessary to complete the compliance reports that the State Bar requires of you. And to whatever extent, expanding these questions makes responding to that more complicated and more time consuming. We want to certainly kind of monitor that and make sense of what the perceived cost could be.
I have a sister-in-law visiting from the East Coast, appreciating the sun as many do. And she just retired from 40 years in the Department of Education. So I'm going to go over at home tonight and interview her about the iPads and find out how it's useful for them. I don't know that anybody wants to hear that, but I do.
Sure. I bring that to the next conversation because I'm curious to hear their perspective. Of course, iPads is used for a number of things that the State Bar doesn't need data for. We're not instituting financial aid and other things, but I think generally being able to report on core demographic data really is important for most programs.
Good.
So then the second consideration, and this is completely separate. It's not an or situation, it's not an or situation. These are two considerations to be considered separately. Is the idea that perhaps our compliance reporting and thus the student demographic data that we collect should include some socioeconomic identifiers on top of what would be traditional race, ethnicity, and gender identifiers. We use the iPads example because it's felt analogous to what we are doing here, and it's very timely. It's something that's occurred recently. And so, the examples we're presenting here is, perhaps adding a question related to family income, perhaps adding a question related to parental college completion, which tells you about their first generation status. And I've shared just some kind of slightly modified examples of the iPad's question definitions and response options. But really, I think, again, this is the ground floor. And so there's an opportunity to consider maybe other socioeconomic identifiers. But I think really the crux here is whether or not new questions should be added that are looking at student populations through this lens, this socioeconomic lens. And again, there are some pros and cons that we see. On the pro side, this could open the door to completely new insights about student outcomes, about enrollment trends that we really currently aren't able to make using our current demographic data. That, I think, adds value to the state bar. It also adds value to law schools when they are making their decisions about policies that are really intended to support different groups. I think to a certain extent, this is responsive to the feedback that we've received in this room. As I've mentioned, our perception is that members have really supported the idea of reflecting the unique socioeconomic backgrounds of their students in other work that we've brought to CSBARS. And so this would be kind of an extension of that feedback that could be adopted here with our law school demographic data. And then again, the cons, I think, are very similar. If we were to explore adding socioeconomic questions, we're now talking less about comporting to other state bar data collection and reporting efforts. And so we're not necessarily achieving that alignment with, for example, the attorney census, where that comparative analysis opportunity was really present. We, in the pros, indicate that this could provide new insights, but we don't know what value would come out of this data because we've never collected it and analyzed it before. And so there's a risk that this is, maybe barking up the wrong tree. And then again, we imagine there's cost and level of effort for law schools to update how they're collecting this information and how they're completing their reporting requirements. So now I want to just pass it off to you all. In my slides, included a few discussion points just in case we need to kick things off. Before I get into my list, I'm just going to put the slides down and open the floor for you all to share your thoughts. And I see Dean Marshall, your hand's raised.
Yeah, having a big background in econometrics and in the use of data, I just really feel like to ask the schools to collect this data that sometimes starts to look like a moving target because we have cultural, social, political tides that come and go. It's a big lift for a school to change its processes and its systems, whether it's through the admissions applications, et cetera, that I really want to ground us and ask, how important is this data to a state bar policy? I'd rather have a policy goal that says, hey, because these are policy considerations, we need to look at this data rather than start looking at data to see if something organically might percolate out of it. Now, I love data, and boy, you can't get enough of it, but it's very expensive to collect. And it occurred to me while you were speaking, Cody, some of this is trying to get it in line with the attorney census. Rather than have schools the different CALs, the different registers, the different ABAs, collecting all of this data, right? Then sending it through their annual reports and forms for you all then to compile and collect and aggregate to do some kind of analysis. That is a lot of duplicative work. And it occurred to me, why couldn't the state bar collect this data, whatever they felt was relevant to their needs, through the fall registration, when the law student registers with the state bar, its first semester within 90 days. Why couldn't that process include that law student who's registering with the state bar, all the favored data that the state bar might want? So now it's being reported once, it's being compiled by the state bar, that then, right, could sort it and send it back to the students. I mean, to the law schools. That seems much more efficient. It seems much probably the cheapest way to do it, and it would comport with the changing tide of the data from year to year that the state bar might find they want as relevant to state bar policy. Those are just my
That's
opening
an
thoughts.
excellent explanation. And I think the other thing that you brought up is we have to let the students know what is our objective in collecting this data. Because I realize we can come up with something, but it's data before you know what you're going to do with it.
Yeah, and I appreciate both of these points. To just respond, Dean Marshall, to the kind of alternative that you proposed, I want to respond to it without suggesting that we're rejecting it, because I think what you brought up is a really interesting idea. The one thing I just wanted to point out was we do collect demographic data when students register with us. It's just there's challenges that come with that. One, it's incomplete because not all individuals register with us, and they don't all register with us timely. Some register late in their their studies. And then also there are elements to the law school compliance reports that are related to admissions practices and applications received, and so we wouldn't capture that information. And so I think there's a discussion to be had about whether that's whether a model in which we don't collect that is palatable. I don't have a response to that, but I just wanted to point out that there would be some gaps. If I could ask one question in return, though, Dean Marshall, before we turn to others, you said it's a big lift, and I don't question that. I wonder if you could just maybe speak to a little bit more kind of why it's a big lift, like what it takes to update these systems, because I'm not sure that I fully know all of the work that goes into it. And I want, if we're going to continue to discuss this with other stakeholders, that they fully understand how challenging this is, because it's easy to maybe miss or to underestimate maybe the task at hand.
Well, I think just to simply put it, just changing our admissions application, that's a big lift. It gets the application has to be revised. It has to then put into our portal, and then we have to give instructions to collect the data. So yeah, that's a very costly endeavor when we are asked to do that over recent years, to be changing that data. It then changes the course of how we collect the data. And then I would just push back to Cody a little bit about your statement that, well, yeah, there's some problems with not all students register timely. There's logistical problems with collecting that data. Not everybody provides the data. That's the exact same problems we have. It's kind of pushing it down chain to us across a myriad of approaches to admissions across all the CALs, et cetera, versus a unified system through the registration process. I just threw that out as a possible vehicle for discussion, by the way.
Sure. And Dean Hunt, I saw that your hand's also raised.
My registrar was sitting here and I said, hey, you should come in and listen to this when you started. And all she's going is table 7 from the annual report is already monumental, and the idea that we would be adding in 3 or 4 more data points, well, good thing it was on mute. But she she indicates that she thinks it would be a big ask. It is a big undertaking. There's no question, to try and compile more and more data. And I think one thing Dean Marshall hinted at, but it is extremely difficult to get out of the students. It may not seem like any big deal, but it is. And then compiling the data, we're a very small administration. And so it's not like we have our statistician over here who's going to take another data point and compile it and put it into the annual report. Now, if you ask us to do it, I was sitting here going, wow, these are really good, interesting questions. I'd like to know our socioeconomic income of our students. Really the 30 to 60,000, the 60 to 90, those and the students that are making more than 90. I think it would be really important for our school to know that. It would be, and for the unaccredited to have some idea in general, is that the student body that we're getting? So I think you've hit on important data points. I thought they were all really good and it would be insightful. And then at the same time, my partner over here is going, great. So I understand both sides of it. I really do. And I like Kevin's idea of pushing it back onto you as being part of the student registration form, but you'll see how difficult it is to get the information from the students. Now, we're small enough that when we need to compile the data, we can literally pick up the phone and call people and get it added in. But, that comes with expense and effort for us to do that.
Dean Hunt, the way that we collect our demographic question or data from registrants, it allows them to skip that section. So we then have to go back and collect in different ways. So we kind of understand the pain points a little bit. I'm curious though, when you're describing the challenge or the challenge to collecting it from students, is it do you have a sense of why, from your students' perspective, is it that they're asking those many questions is, just perceived negatively, or that there's more important things?
Birding chickens.
I think, well, for me, a personal story, I have a learning disability and I sent out my first 10 applications to law school and got 10 rejections. And then I sent out 10 applications to law school and didn't tell anybody I had a disability, and got accepted to a few and waitlisted on a few. And then when I got to law school, they said, why didn't you tell us? There's a reason why I didn't tell me. And I would think people who are from the LGBTQ community are worried. I would think African-American women are worried. They're the primary targets. And so we get African-American women applying to the program, and under it says white male. And, we know she's not a white male. Right. And so what do we do with that? Mm-hmm. And we call her up, and now she's, we're putting together our annual report, and we've got to call Shakira Johnson, a name I just made up, and say, hey, it says you're a white male. And she goes, no, I'm an African-American female. And we correct it, and then can correct the data we send out in the annual report. But you'd be surprised how many students we have to do that for.
Yeah.
I would like it if you're having a white male category, you ought to put Irish under that.
Well, I mean, that is part of some of the expansions that we've explored here at the State Bar. I'll use my own personal example. I'm Armenian, and so under our current elsewhere in the state bar, if you can indicate that you're white and you can also indicate that you're Armenian, and that adds an interesting level of nuance that we previously didn't capture.
I thought the categories for Asian was really interesting because, of
It
course,
is.
it's an enormous geographical area with huge cultural differences and migration to the United States differences that impact who they are as people, without a doubt. I was, when that part popped up on the screen, I was showing it to the registrar, and she was going, "Oh, that we could incorporate." I could see the, whether how much that would affect our being able to target resources and things. I'm not sure. I thought the financial one was really big. That would be something that would be beneficial. But again, it's a big ask. People are going to be worried about saying they make under $30,000 a year, but now we're going to have to find a way to pay for law school. They may not want to tell us that.
Yeah. Dr. Bolton, I think you had raised your hand.
I just want to know the function of collecting data. What anticipated theory?
Oh, Dr. Bolton, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. It's very muffled. I'm having trouble hearing you. It's a bit unclear.
I want to know the function purpose of collecting the data.
Yeah, Doctor, I'm so sorry. I really had having trouble hearing that question.
I'm asking what is the functional purpose of the data?
What is the ultimate purpose of the data, I believe was what he was asking.
Oh, okay.
Good question.
Thank you, Dean Keller. I'm sorry, Dr. Bolton. I couldn't hear in my headphones, but thank you. I mean, I think, let me put in the two buckets. If we are exploring, comporting our questions and response options to other reporting that we're doing at the state bar, I think the ultimate goal there is to essentially continue to collect the same overall demographic questions. That's gender, race, ethnicity, veteran status, disability status, etc. But to add this new layer of nuance that we are now seeing implemented elsewhere in the state bar, such as these additional race and ethnicity identifiers. What that the kinds of opportunities that presents, for example, elsewhere at the state bar, we have used some demographic data to better target stakeholder engagement and communications to certain groups. So I'm, understanding again that a student population is not just particularly Asian, but is primarily, like I said earlier, of Chinese descent. That maybe helps us focus our programming in a different way. For example, we have a large number of international students who sit for the bar exam, and perhaps this tells us something a little more nuanced about where exactly their origins are. But let me just take a step back and say, overall, I think the goal of that effort would be one, it would be to not really change the high-level demographic questions that we have, but to add this extra layer. This then, like I said, gives us the nuance. It also provides the opportunity to do more of the comparative analysis with the other state bar reports that are out there. And from there, I think the opportunities are not yet fully defined, but what kinds of reporting we could do that connects our attorney population and our student population in more interesting ways. I think you can kind of just assume kind of what can be done there, and that those are new opportunities that we haven't really been able to explore. If we talk on the socioeconomics front, I think that's really kind of uncharted territory. That would be really dipping our toe into exploring completely new new identifiers. What that then could tell us from a decision-making standpoint, you can imagine the socioeconomic identifiers could be could inform discussions around applicant fees. I think it could really tell us a lot about situational, well, we're calling our situational questions, but the Supreme Court has directed us to explore these situational questions in designing the future of the bar exam. So whether or not people are first-time generation students might tell you something about the needs they have for preparing for the bar exam, or their needs for our bar support programming, like the bar strategies and stories program. So, I mean, these are just some examples. There's no immediate policy question in front of us today, but I'm just, I think, trying to articulate what kinds of programs and what kinds of initiatives we could explore if we had a better sense or more nuanced sense of the student population.
Good, thank you.
I think there's a lot to be said for it, but Cody, you mentioned something that's interesting. And I think as a criminal practitioner for almost 50 years now, if you looked at some family income levels and you looked at the cost of tuition, you might wonder where the money came from. And that could open up a Pandora's box of difficulties for some people. Probably not for a lot of people, but for some people.
Dean Marshall had his hands up before I did, so I don't want to intrude.
Yeah, so I want to be clear, Cody. The more data, it's so much fun. And the more we get, and you can go down rabbit holes with it. But I also know that the bigger the survey questions, the more questions you ask those who are participating, the less they want to participate. And so you can overdo even the survey question in terms of, are you Asian? And then all the subcategories below it. And then are you going to do that for Hispanic? I mean, this could get really, really large. And again, don't get me wrong, I think it would be wonderful to see all that. But to ask the student, I mean, I think the institutions, the various schools, they have an interest in their own data. They have proprietary interest in why they ask this data that's relevant to their school. And it sounds like the state bar has another layer of interest as to what the state bar programs to be able to compare performances across schools, et cetera. And I just want to go back to, it seems like there might be a single pivot point in the state bar registration process. And maybe it's not at the registration process. Maybe it's at the certification for signing up for the bar exam or something, where you could have, again, you'd still have relevant data, right? It'd be the students who got through school, who are graduating and sitting for the bar exam. But maybe there is a point in which it might make sense for this very nuanced, complete data dive takes place at the state bar level, somewhere during their journey from the first day of law school to the bar exam.
Yeah, and that's that kind of exploration is still ongoing too. I mean, we're exploring updating the demographic questions in the registration portal. We haven't yet, but this feedback's super helpful, and we can consider whether there's more work that can be done there. And Dean Marshall, I think I just want to also address too, we spend a lot of time with our data analyst folks asking the same questions you are, which is, what do we want to accomplish with this? And can we make sure that we're not just introducing new opportunities for data collection because they're interesting, but they'll lead to interesting and valuable results. So I don't want this discussion to imply that we're blind to kind of the risk of kind of overdoing it. We really are thinking about that intentionally. So I appreciate you kind of putting that mirror up and sending that back to us, but it's part of our decision making and our discussions internally. And Dean Yurishek, I think you had your hand raised, but
no, that's fine. It because I spoke, it took my hand down. And I was fine now. It really, Dean Marshall said much more eloquently than I could. I'm going to add just a little bit. It's back to, and what has been asked multiple times, what is the purpose of the data, right? And I know you've mentioned multiple things and that it hasn't yet been finalized. And this is just opportunities and beginning discussion. Collecting data, different data sets, whether it's the annual report, whether it's WASC, whether it's iPads, etc. It is costly, it is cumbersome. And so doing that cost benefit analysis without knowing truly what the purpose is makes it very difficult, I think. And that's one of the reasons I'm very glad that this is on our work plan for April as well, right? Because I think, and I may be wrong, but there may need to be a little bit more fleshing out of more information. I don't know, Cody, for example, did you get some of the answers that in your discussion topics, right? Because I think nobody is doubting that I've heard the value of some of this information, but what will it be used for, and who or what is the best source of gathering?
Mhm.
I love Dean Marshall's idea and ideas, right? And it's definitely more efficient and effective to have the state bar collected versus having us collected then to give it to the state bar. But anyway, that's really, I think, a lot of great discussion, and I'm mindful of the time. We've got about 8 minutes left, so we've got some time.
Yeah, I just Dean Yurishek, if I could add one piece to it. I think I put out a lot of interesting shiny objects and opportunities. What's most in front of us and will continue to be in front of us for this demographic reporting is the law school performance reports. We will be continuing to produce those annually as required. And so perhaps when we have another discussion, we can focus perhaps primarily on, would any of these ideas significantly enhance that law school performance report in a way that has some value to the state bar and the law schools? That is for certain going to continue. All these other opportunities are truly just opportunities at this point. And so to whatever extent those were distractions, I apologize. But we can certainly focus on what would this law school performance report look like and offer in the future, and how does that then connect to some of these other reports that I've talked about, like our attorney census. And maybe that's the way to keep this discussion kind of properly scoped. And so I'll consider that as we explore any future discussions on this.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Just hone in. One of the questions I had in looking at the PowerPoint before the meeting, because it was posted with the agenda, is really what is the ask, right? Because this is it was the early on. This is the discussion. This is opportunity. So it's good to have it broad, right? So that you're not limiting it. But I really appreciate you now limiting it to what is it? What's the key? What's the rationale? What's the purpose? And the law school performance report. I appreciate that. I'm wondering if it would work well to send out a survey similar that has been done right now. You've set a precedent of sending out surveys that have tended to be consistent with this group's discussion. That may be also helpful to get more voices, more schools, etc. Especially on you have some very specific, really good questions about timelines, costs, so that you can look at I'm going to call it the burden, right, placed on the on the law schools.
Yeah, that certainly could be a future option. I think maybe either internally or perhaps even a discussion with our CV members. I think at the highest level, there's a question of whether or not any of the possible benefits outweigh some of the, I think, the big challenges you've all already presented. So before we even flush out a proposal that I think we would want to survey, I think we should really talk with our stakeholders and decision makers about kind of weighing the benefits with what I think the costs are very clear already just based on the feedback today. That might settle this discussion already. And that was the kind of feedback I was hoping to get more clarity on. And I think you all helped us understand kind of exactly the level of effort and burden that this would require.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you very much for all the feedback.
Any other comments? Thank you to both Cody and to Natalie for providing very well prepared and agenda items. I always appreciate you can see how hard staff has worked, and I really appreciate Dean Hunt and Dean Marshall for taking the lead on the generative AI discussion. And I thank you all for being here today. I don't have any further. I don't know if there are anything else that Natalie or Cody or Teresa. Oh, sorry, I forgot mentioned Teresa. Thank you. You're on the bottom of my screen. You usually are on the top. I don't know why you moved. Nope.
No further.
Okay, so the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.
Fantastic.
Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Good
Bye.
night, everybody.
Appreciate it.